Welcome to a special broadcast on Times Now. Joining me is Shekhar Suman, needs no introduction. Mr. Suman, thank you for speaking to Times Now. I want to begin by asking you, what is your understanding of Sushant Singh Rajput's death?
What is my understanding is that they're more than meets the eye. I think the narrative that was set right in the beginning that said that it's a plain and simple case of suicide was wrong in the first place, because you can never be in a hurry to kind of just look at an incident like that and give a judgment. One had to say it looks like a probable suicide, but after high-level inquiries or after the forensic report or whatever, we'll be able to come to the conclusion whether this is suicide or probably there is foul play. So I think right from the beginning, right from the very start, when we heard, first of all, it was so shocking to believe that Sushant could do something like this for a man who was, very successful. Even his last film was a huge hit. Though one heard stories about his mental depression, clinical depression, manic depression, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the fact was that he was a very strong-willed guy. I mean, what I know of him. And, the posts, all the Insta posts that I have read, he seemed to be a guy who was standing firmly on his ground. For somebody like him, who was fairly intelligent, to have just taken his life and not leave a suicide note behind, exonerating everybody else and taking the onus on himself, that he's taking his own life out of his own will and volition, is something, it sounds and looks very shady. So that was my first knee-jerk reaction to that, and that I was not alone in this thought, that there were many people who joined me, and they have been saying things separately, questioning the same thing, that why was the narrative set as suicide when an inquiry had not even begun.
Yes, I get that. Now, let me ask you this. You've put out a lot of tweets and I've gone through them. Let me quote you one. You've said, we all will have to take a more belligerent stand and not be cowed down by the suicide narrative. Would you like to elaborate on this, Mr. Suman? What do you mean?
Yes, what I mean to say is, normally when you're fighting against a system, when you're questioning the system, it so happens that the system, after a point, crushes you. It stops listening to you. It becomes deaf. And that, what I meant was that, when we are, pressing for a CBI inquiry, don't give up. The stand has to be very belligerent, and that let's not get cowered down by this narrative that has been handed out to us. We need an inquiry, a CBI inquiry into this, because there have been past cases where they've been declared a suicide and it turned out to be a murder. Many instances where it was hurriedly said that the open and shut case, it looks like a plain, simple case of suicide, turned out to be murder. Many cases like that. So that's why I just said that we have to go ahead and ask and be very insistent in asking for a CBI inquiry and not give up.
Right. Now, is there a group, Mr. Suman, do you believe there's a group in Bollywood that was shedding fake tears for Sushant Singh Rajput? You've said that their mask has slipped.
Yes, I think definitely. You see, there were many reasons why a person would commit suicide. There can be financial reasons, there can be emotional reasons, there can be professional reasons. I think there were a lot of factors, that all instigated or precipitated whatever happened, whether it was suicide or whether he was pushed to the brink, to the precipice, that he was forced, he was compelled to do what he did, if at all. Yes, I mean, that's the way I look at it, that there is definitely a syndicate in the industry, which is very, very active, that has taken control of the industry in terms of deciding who will act in which movie. The bigger productions are controlled by this nexus, and they decide the casting of the movie, the release of the film. These are the people who have complete control over the theaters. So, and they are the ones who pre-decide when the movie is going to be released, and no one else is allowed to share that date. No one else is given their share of theaters. So an outsider who's making a film or somebody who's acting in it could, probably be just brushed aside or pushed aside, and no matter how talented he may be. And this gang just makes sure that, even if there is a star on the periphery, that he becomes a part of the nexus, and then he has to be a yes man. He has to be a sycophant. He has to just toe the line and just agree to whatever they say. If you become stroppy, if you become argumentative, or if you become defiant, or you have the guts to say no, then I guess then you meet the same fate as Sushant did.
Okay. Let me ask you this. You've also lashed out at what you believe is a certain mafia in Bollywood, not perhaps in the literal sense of the word, but, as a metaphor. Why should these people not be named?
No, I don't think so. There is, in absence of any proof, you cannot just name them. That would be absolutely unethical and unfair. But one knows that they are there, I might not even be aware of the names, but I know they exist. The mafia exists. If there is an underworld, I might not know the name of the dons, but I know it exists, right? And there are people being extorted, people being bumped off, people being, tortured or whatever. But I'm not aware of the names. Even if I'm aware, I'm not sure of the names. Even if I'm sure, I don't have the proof. So it would be just sensationalizing, and I think it's unethical. So there's no question of taking any names, but it does exist, and that's important.
Okay. Is there a star culture, Mr. Suman, in Bollywood that is responsible for the state of things, of what we are seeing, that fear that if you're not a star, you are nobody, that, if your films don't do well, your life is finished, this notion of, being larger than life?
No, as I said, they are the ones who control everything, whether you are a star kid or you're not. Whether you are an outsider or insider, there's no question of any nepotism. Nepotism is okay; it exists everywhere. There's, a father will make a film for his father, brother will make for his brother, etc. Blah blah blah. But if that was the case, then a lot of these big stars' sons have not fared well, and they haven't reached where they were supposed to. On the other hand, if you look at it, a lot of outsiders have done well. Even in today's scenario, when you look at it, all the guys, all the names to reckon with are the ones who are outsiders. I'm saying these are the people who control both insiders and outsiders, because they have formed a clique, a coterie, where they decide everything, and they are the ones who just hand out roles to you or decide whether you're going to be part of that nexus or not. So as long as you keep towing the line, as I said before, as long as you keep saying yes, as long as you keep listening to them, they would keep you in that coterie. The moment you are defiant, the moment you become choosy, the moment you say, I have a choice, that's the time the problem begins.
Okay, Mr. Suman, let me ask you, what's the road ahead as far as your campaign is concerned, this forum that you've launched to seek justice for Sushant Singh Rajput?
Yes, this campaign that has started, Justice for Sushant Forum, the idea is to just galvanize support. The public support is huge. I think there's a lot of anger, and people know that, it doesn't look like a simple suicide, and that he had no reasons. And time and again, I have reiterated that if it was a suicide, he would have definitely left a suicide note. He hasn't done that. And if you look at the sequential events, what happened before, he had no reason to commit suicide because he was partying, and then he was like playing PlayStation, and then he was just moving around the house, and suddenly he just can't decide to, take a cloth and just hang himself. That doesn't happen. So people need answers. People need a closure on this, unlike other times where we were made to believe that it's a suicide. It remained a suicide, and some of the times the cases were unraveled, reopened, and we found out that it wasn't a suicide, it was a murder. Like in case of Sheena Bora, we were made to believe that, and the friends thought that, when she went missing, people thought that she had packed her bags and left for America and settled there. It was only after, years later, when somebody spilled the beans, that you found out that there was no such story, and that narrative was built. Actually, she was murdered and buried in the ground. So, we have to just keep that pressure on through this forum. A lot of people have joined it, and we will implore, and we will probably pressurize the state government to launch a CBI inquiry. That's the whole purpose of it. And also, I think, the purpose is also to make aware the people who have made these nexus, the people who are part of the nexus, like big directors and producers and actors. And now it is their responsibility, the Janta's responsibility, to kind of pull them down and just say categorically that we are no mood to kind of accept all this mediocrity when their real talent exists outside.
Okay, finally, let me ask you, Mr. Suman, why are we not taking names? I mean, despite all of this, so much of outrage, anger, not just on social media, we're still not taking names. Is it not the right time to expose these people?
They are being exposed. I mean, I don't have to expose them. They are exposed. I think the murder just came as a trigger point. It's an occasion more than anything else for, it's like Pandora's box. It's the Pandora's box has opened up the can of worms. And there are many things that have emerged, not just about the film industry, the music industry, and, even the Me Too movement was also connected with this, where this kind of an exploitation happens in the industry, and there are women who came forward and revealed very shocking facts. So, things are happening. The movements began with Me Too, and it has come till here. And Sushant is, of course, very tragic. Whether it was suicide and whether it's a murder or abetment to murder, whatever, that alone time will tell. But I guess that from this, that one has realized that this nexus exists out here, and they are very cruel, and they are wicked, and they're mercenaries, and that they would stop at nothing to achieve their ends. So one has to just bring them down, on their knees, and that should be the effort.
Okay. On that note, let me thank you once again for taking out time and for speaking to us. We wish you luck in this campaign to seek justice for Sushant Singh Rajput. And let me once again applaud you for the courage that you're showing and for the stand that you've taken. Mr. Suman, pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.